Building an in-ground pool is a big investment, which is why Viking Capital's loans are designed to spread the cost of the project over many years, so that monthly payments are affordable for your customers. Viking Capital is the preferred pool financing partner for a few important reasons. We offer financing decisions in as little as 24 hours and funding for projects as quickly as just 2 days. With loans for scores as low as 620 and no income verification options for well-qualified buyers, we also have the highest approval rates found in the swimming pool industry. A family-owned business, Viking Capital has been working shoulder to shoulder with pool builders for over 25 years. Interested in learning more about our Builder Partner Program? Visit poolloan.net for more information.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Trusty, and today I'm chatting with Chris Webb of National Pool Route Sales, a leading business brokerage firm specializing in the sale and acquisition of pool service and repair routes across the United States. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show, Chris.
Joe, it's actually great to talk to you. I know we've bumped into each other at different shows and things like that, but never been able to sit down. So this will be a good time.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally got a chance to connect. But before we dive deep into our discussion today, I thought a good starting point would be if I first had you introduce yourself a bit, explain your role in your company, and give us a brief overview of what National Pool Route Sales is all about.
Sure. So my name is Chris Webb, and I'm officially the general manager of National Pool Route Sales. And we are, like we said, a business broker, but we specialize in the purchasing and the sale of pool routes, guys and gals in the service industry. I've been with the company for maybe 8 years now. We have a lot of really experienced people, here. Our company was founded by Charles Baird 40 years ago. Charles has been in the industry, better known as writing the book, The Millionaire Pool Man, and at all the shows and doing all the education seminars. That is who our founder is, that brought us up and fine-tuned, really, I want to say, the whole industry and the marketplace for selling routes and putting value on businesses. Prior to that, there wasn't much of a venue for someone in the service industry, especially pool service. When they're ready to retire, it was pretty much many of the times just parking the truck. There wasn't really a marketplace to an evaluation to put on these things. And we'd be able to get that done and to give people a great opportunity to not only cash out when it's time to retire, but also a way to make some money along the way.
I see you at the shows a lot of the times, folks come over to you when we were booth mates at a few of these things. I'd see, pool pros coming over to you to pick your brain about buying or selling a route and just talking to you and getting their questions answered for like a half an hour, 45 minutes. They're just standing there firing questions at you. But I got a few questions for you today. I mean,
sure.
When working with a pool company and trying to determine its value, what is the typical approach that you guys take towards determining how much a pool company is worth? Is there a typical multiplier that you guys use or a formula that you guys use?
Yeah, typically it kind of goes two ways, but it depends. So it depends a little bit on the marketplace of the route, whether it's in the, certain desert routes are valued differently than what routes were in Northern California for a long time. So there is some various differences, but typically on a route, you can expect them to transact at a multiple of whatever the monthly recurring service rate is, or service plus if you charge a flat rate, including chems, service rate, or service rate if you charge additional per chems, service plus basic chems. So that's your rate. And then a multiple is applied to that general revenue number. Not much emotion involved in the valuation, is just a straight multiple. Those ranges can be anywhere from 8 times to 12 is the valuations. And that's going to be what is paid to the seller. There's a little bit of commission that's added in. On the buy side, it'd be a little bit more. But on the sell side, if we're talking to pool pros, that's what you can expect in your pocket.
Okay, well, you touched on one thing, that regionality has a big factor to play in this. Can you expound on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, and it's a factor. I don't even know if it's a big factor. There just seems to be certain pockets, and I'm going to have to throw San Diego under the bus, but I'll give, for an instance, San Diego was a market that sold for a premium for many years, and then couldn't find a buyer to pay that premium anymore because we only deal with what the market says. So if the market doesn't want to pay it, the market's not going to pay it. So that premium did kind of fade away. We were able to get a little bit more money in San Diego again. So that can change. The desert routes sometimes are harder to get a full premium for. Sometimes we do look at the rates and what they're charging, and certain routes just can't pull a full value out of them, depending on if they're charging just too low versus the marketplace. And that's really, and like I said, that is just to price them so that they're competitive for the buyers that are coming into the marketplace when they look at Route 1 and Route 2, that these two routes are now competitive based on how they're priced.
Well, I mean, as a seller, what are some of the things that you would usually recommend pool companies do in order to make themselves appear more attractive to potential buyers?
Sure. The buyers that are out there in the marketplace are savvy to rates. Make sure that your rates are in the top 50% of your marketplace. So if your general marketplace, if the cheap guys are at 140 and the mid guys are 150 and the high guys are at 160, try to get yourself just above 150. The buyers do like to see slightly higher rates. Not, you don't have to be the Cadillac. Maybe that's not as attractive as being just a solid contender. So there's one is watch your rates and try to make sure you're keeping up with the rates. Don't think, well, I'm thinking about selling, so maybe I won't raise my rates. Go ahead and do it. Run your business the way you're going to run your business. Two, if you're looking to divest, if you're looking and you have the flexibility, sometimes it makes sense to sell a piece of the route. If you have a large one or multiples, is to be flexible with the number that you're willing to sell. Because we've got a buyer, and that buyer is going to come into a market, and they're going to say, I want to be in Tyler, Texas, and I have this much money in my pocket, and I want to do pools. All right. Well, that's going to dictate where they are and their budget. And if you're selling in Tyler, Texas, and this buyer can afford 40 pools, and you're selling 90, he's not going to look at you. But if you have the flexibility of saying, no, I don't mind, I can sell 40 pools. Great. Then now we can connect this buyer that happens to be in the market when you're looking to sell with you. So having that flexibility or having an open mind to that flexibility is nice information for us to have, to know that we can connect someone up with you and you're willing to get that done. It definitely opens the world up for different things.
Sure. A buddy of mine was looking to buy a route, and I was like, well, what are you looking for? He was like, well, I want a really tight route. I want the pools closely located, one next to the other, so that I'm not running all over town trying to run this route. And I said, is that really difficult to find? And he was like, yeah, it can be, because a lot of these people, that their route is so expansive over a territory that I'm not willing to service. Yeah,
and I'll tell you, I'll plug into that is that we're pretty good what we do. Even when you're building a route, and because I don't want, sometimes sellers, they're in a position they start to fret like, oh God, I'm like that. I'm north, south, east, and west. And the answer is, well, as long as you're not doing it on the same day. If you go out on Monday and then where you are on Monday is relatively tight and makes sense, and Tuesday's tight and makes sense, great. How many folks try to build a route so they can do some pools on the way to the distributor to buy supplies? Like, yeah, my Tuesday route is when I go to visit SCP. So I have these accounts along the way. So a tight route is great, but just not to make people stress about it. If it makes sense per day, you're still solid. Sometimes that hub and spoke approach is the best way to grow a route too. It gives you a lot more opportunity to do more things and earn some more money.
Well, I was speaking with a good friend of mine. He's been running a pool company for about 25 years, and he's in the same position that I find a lot of pool pros find themselves in. Is he didn't have a succession plan in place for what the next steps were going to be. He's looking to sell his business, and he's been trying to sell this business for about a year, but he's trying to sell it as a whole. Okay. And we've had numerous conversations about this. He says a big part of the problem in selling his business has been the way that he's always paid himself. And I've heard that sometimes it can be difficult to determine how much a business is worth based on how the owner pays himself. Is this true?
Yeah. Maybe this is a great adder to the first question, how routes are valued. When I spoke about basic routes and being the multiple, that's one way for basic routes. But when we look at larger businesses as a whole, there comes a point where maybe it makes sense to look at valuation two ways. These things are not complicated. Even someone that does $50,000 a year versus a route that does $5 million a year, in their essence, they're about the same thing. They just do more of it. But there is a time to look at it two different ways, especially at a certain price point and the buyers are in the market. And that is to look at owner benefit. And that's all right, the route's great that we can put the value on that of the route plus the vehicles and the equipment, add that up. Here you go. That's that price. But also turn the page. Let's look at it in a more traditional way that a generic business broker would. And that's looking at the benefit, that bottom line benefit that this business provides. And it's not as much a matter. This is the key to people you're in business for yourself. And that's to pay yourself as much money and pay the government as little of it as possible. But it's not as much of what you get paid, it's what you can document. So if that salary line is right there, we know we can add that to the bottom line. If the business makes $200,000 and of that you pay yourself $195,000, that bottom line says, boy, we only make $5,000. Well, no, when we're looking at it as brokers, we're looking at what does it benefit the owner. So that goes in there. If the business also pays for their ski chalet, we're going to add that back in because the new owner is not going to be paying for the ski chalet. So there are items that we can add back in and then apply a multiple based on the market to that bottom line. Traditionally, it's which one comes out better is the beautiful thing when we're doing it is how do we want to represent it? How do we want to break it up? Do we want to sell it as routes? Is that going to get you more money and get things done in the speed that you want it? Or we're going to sell this thing as one big unit, put one big number on it, and we're going to develop our price that way because the buyers coming in are going to want to see financials and look at things a certain way that we have to provide them. So if Pool Pros, if you have a business of a certain size, and let's say if it's over 250, 300 and beyond, start thinking about it ahead. If you put $1 in your pocket to save you 40 cents in taxes, you've just cost yourself possibly $3 to $4 in sale price. So get as much down there on paper as you can. Make it easy for us to add back and show it to a buyer.
When somebody inquires through your website or they come over to you at the show and they say, hey, Chris, I want to sell my route. What are the most important things that sellers need to be aware of before they think about selling their route?
Not much. The route is the route. And we've seen so many of these that we can really take it in and work with the seller, irregardless of what their starting point is what they're looking at. We can work with them and get these things looking good and market it in a nice way. Rarely do I get a seller they're not ready, other than not mentally ready. That's a whole different conversation.
So they got to be mentally
that they're just not. Yeah, well, yeah. That's well. You're in the backyard. This industry you are one step from someone's living room. You're in charge of this pool that the kids swim in. You've seen the kids grow up. People trust their pool person. And you've been there, and a lot of times, these have been customers for 15 years. So sometimes there's that mental piece that you have to be ready to try to find someone else to take care of and hand these pools off to. And that person you hand it off to, they might be new. This might be their big chance to go out and make their own living and be their own boss. They're not, you're not going to hand it over to someone. Most of the time when you sell this route, you're not selling it to someone that has 15 years of experience, just going to roll right in and pick it up. Someone with 15 years of experience can either build a route or they're just buying pieces of it to flesh out a route. That's the most, with someone in the industry. Most of the time when you're selling these, it's someone new that it's like, yes, I want what you have, meaning I want to be out there, have my own business, take care of these people and get paid for it. So they're going to be new to it, but you got to be able to say, yeah, here you go. This is how you take care of them. This is how you succeed. That's the most important mental piece that a seller can have is this person that picks up the accounts. You have to want them to succeed, and they will.
Sure. Being mentally ready for that second or third act is definitely a big factor in that. I could see why a lot of people struggle with when am I going to be ready to sell my business?
Yeah.
Let's flip that question around for a sec. What are the key things that a buyer would need to be on the lookout for?
Okay, on the buy side, it's again when you look at, well, I want a tight route, but really the buy side needs to be is, are the accounts where I want to be? I sit here in Central Florida, so I'm over outside Tampa. And so I'll have folks that come in, they're pretty good about being geographically based, but I have some folks that are like, I'm going to live in this part of Pinellas. I'm looking at accounts that are over here in this part of South Hillsborough. And in your brain, you're like, no, you will never be able to drive there every single day. Like, it's impossible to get from point A to point B. So even though they get enamored and they just want to pick whatever they think works, but these things have to work for your life and where you live. The other thing that buyers are looking at or that they can consider is their ability to grow, meaning once you get the hang of things and once you get going, if you're doing things the way you're supposed to, if you're following, with our company, we have the Millionaire Pool Man program. We give you this help to go out there and be better at what you do. You're better at what you do, and if you are, you're going to be able to pick up more accounts and you'll be able to grow. With the way our deals are structured on the buy side is that there's a little guarantee that these accounts are going to transfer. So they have a little more assurance that these homeowners are going to stick with you for that transition period and you'll have them going forward. So that's a nice thing to have when you work with a broker, that there's a contract to protect you. And then the contract protects the seller too. That's designed to be equal both ways. But are they in the area you want to be? Are the rates generally solid for the area, meaning in striking range of the median? And then the learning curves feel steep, but you get through without a problem. You don't have to know everything about chemistry before you decide that this is what you want to get into. Talk to the sellers, get a feel for who they are and kind of the industry. The third thing, more important thing, we run into each other at shows, Joe. The shows. The number of buyers that we've just begged these buyers is, if there's a show, if you get lucky enough and you have a pool show somewhere in your market within, in a reasonable amount of time, go to it. It's the best way to have confidence in getting into this industry is to be surrounded by all these professionals that are there to learn, they're there to share, they're there to show off. You meet all these people and go, wow, these aren't even competition. These are folks that want to see me do well. How many of you pool pros are on text threads with other pool guys or the Facebook groups where you're like, you can ask a question and then you get 10 answers of people that want you to do it right and to look good.
Sure.
It's a great industry. It's probably the hidden gem of this industry is how good, literally good the people are that make it up, that comprise it.
Yeah, there's some big groups where, like, if you're interested in getting into the industry and you don't know the value of accounts are in your market, you can just go into the groups and say, well, what do guys typically charge in Tampa for monthly service, right? Or you can do mystery shopping.
Yeah, 100%. But I agree. But like I said, it's even just the number of sharing best practices. Boy, like I said, you go to the shows, you go to the education thing, but you just bump up to somebody at the booth and hear them talk and ask them a question. And they're happy to explain how X, Y, or Z makes their lives easy and encourages you to do it. It's great. And there's plenty of smaller groups between IPSA meetings and FSPA Florida meetings that go on on the smaller scale and other tabletop events, golf tournaments, any of those things that are going on. New people need to look into that and dig into that. And the industry sells itself. That it's great to interact with, even before you bought the route.
Yeah, I agree. Networking at these shows is definitely a great idea, but I'm sure you get asked this question every single time, but how does national pool route sales factor into the equation, and how do you guys get paid for brokering the deal?
Really, so it's not from listing. We actually have to get a deal signed, and it's a matter of the buyers pay a little bit extra, and that's the commission on the sale. So if a seller is getting 10 times, we mark it up a little bit more, and the buyers pay a little bit extra, and that amount is the commission.
All right, so you add some basis points there to that number that you're trying to make your commission on. So is that typically like, if I'm selling it for 10x, but I'm willing to take 8x, then you have a buffer to meet that commission, right?
Yeah, we usually keep that 8x in our pocket. If your route's worth 10x, we work like heck to make sure you get that full 10x.
Right.
We're very firm to keep prices up in a marketplace. It's just good for the industry. And but yeah, if they're going to take 10 times, then we'd be out selling it for 11 and change, 12 typically. As an aside, there's some variances based on size, but we're pretty firm on that one. We provide a lot to a given buyer, so we try to we give them the value that they're paying for. That's for sure. And then on top of that, just creating the marketplace for when there is a route to sell is we project the word out as far as wide as possible through different marketing channels. Our own site that gets thousands and thousands of people that watch it, that visit to see what's popping up and what's new.
Sure. I mean, but what's your typical process like when you're working with these guys? I mean, what are the terms and due diligence process and startup costs in getting involved in buying a pool route?
When a buyer comes in and they're, willing and able, it's a matter of conference calls with the seller, going through those dossiers and the route data, some interviews with the seller about the accounts. From there, the most important due diligence really is that, that these set of accounts that the buyer's worried about, are they real? Do they really pay their bills? And you'll meet with the seller to review that list, to review some payment history, that indeed this is the cash flow moving forward. Sometimes, depending, the sellers will also include equipment. Sometimes if there's a truck, if they're getting out of it, they're like, put a fair price on their truck. So the buyers can actually pick up a route and the tools and the truck and off you go. And then when those meet and they have an agreement, the buyers need to get the insurance. And I don't have, the insurance varies pretty widely. We try to direct them to the insurance agencies as a small handful that have direct experience with the industry. We try to direct them to get quotes from those folks to make sure their coverage matches just what they need and not to be overinsured. They need to go out and make sure they have their business licenses, which is none of these things are really overwhelming. A lot of them are just an online item. Then really, if there's commercial pools, of course, you have to go push them and get their CPO, their CPO certification before they can do those. But really from there, that'll fit the bill. We set those terms of how many accounts are they going to buy, what's that monthly billing. The buyer's going to put all their funds up in it to be held in a trust account. Contracts are signed. The seller submits their list that meets or exceeds whatever is agreed upon. Then we close the deal, send out some of the checks, send out some of the list, but then the seller needs to get going with training. So the seller is going to train the buyers on their mode of operation. This is how we brush. This is how we check chemistry. This is our route that we travel, just like you're training up a new tech.
Sure. So they have to be willing to, as a seller, they have to be willing to submit to that transparent due diligence process and commit to a smooth transition and handoff of the business and process.
Well, and that is the real gist of this whole of the whole transaction. The real gist of it is that smooth transition and having the seller actually involved in it, leveraging their relationship with the client to make sure that the buyer is on their way. That's the most key part of it. And the communication surrounding that is sharing the story of why you're doing it. Sometimes sellers they're going to concentrate on repairs only and they're not doing service or making the move a lot. Recent years, making the move to construction and renovation and taking their focus off of the service side. Usually an easy one. And the buyers, even though it's their route, they can do whatever, but they need to be clear that they need to maintain the mode of operation. So you're not changing the day, you're not changing the rates, especially during the guarantee period. Because if you change something that causes someone to quit, that's on you. There's no guarantee if you cause someone to quit. So that transition or that part of the transition is really important, and the seller being part of it is a key part too. It isn't just here's the list, good luck, God bless.
Well, I mean, I know you guys have been in the industry a long time. You've seen different markets. There are those of us in the industry that knew that the conditions that we saw during the pandemic were kind of an anomaly and not the normal run of things. Now, is it easy to sell a pool company given all the economic changes we've experienced in the pool industry over the last 2 years?
It wasn't, the pandemic didn't have a huge impact in our side. Pool service and as far as the sanitation around the house was necessary and so they could keep working so that, so they could keep servicing the pools for sanitation reasons. Really more overarching, if you even go back to 2008 and 2009, that time period when everything went sideways, we were still selling routes and people buying routes. This industry is built on entrepreneurs and people that are out there working for themselves and making their own thing happen. When there's something that happens, we'll say the pandemic, or even around election times when things get turbulent, people might freeze up for a little bit, but it's usually pretty temporary. They'll thaw and get back to business pretty quickly. What the entrepreneurs don't like, the buyers and the sellers, is this turbulence and this change. But once they figure it out and get their bearings, they get right back to business and keep on keeping on. So we're very fortunate that people are resilient in this industry.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for taking time out today to be on the show. And thanks for sharing some of your expertise with us. Really very informative, and I'm certain we answered a bunch of questions pool pros might be having about buying or selling a business. That's all the time we have left for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
Building an in-ground pool is a big investment, which is why Viking Capital's loans are designed to spread the cost of the project over many years, so that monthly payments are affordable for your customers. Viking Capital is the preferred pool financing partner for a few important reasons. We offer financing decisions in as little as 24 hours and funding for projects as quickly as just 2 days. With loans for scores as low as 620 and no income verification options for well-qualified buyers, we also have the highest approval rates found in the swimming pool industry. A family-owned business, Viking Capital has been working shoulder to shoulder with pool builders for over 25 years. Interested in learning more about our Builder Partner Program? Visit poolloan.net for more information.